Welcome to OverBoost 50. OverBoost is a podcast interview series featuring discussions with speedrunners about their history in speedrunning and gaming and the runs they're passionate about. I am your host, PMC Trilogy, and with me today is Bubzia. Bubzia, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, I love to start these off with current events, and right now we are recording this on the 1st of May, 2021, which means that there is nothing more current on the minds of many speedrunners than pending SGDQ 2021 submissions. And I know from looking at your Twitter account that you had a handful of submissions that you put in, and so I was curious if you could maybe highlight, maybe first off, let me ask the obvious question, which is if you could pick one to automatically get in, what's your automatic in that you would want?
Nier Automata A ending. It's really it's probably out of all the blindfolded runs I've done so far, it's like my personal favorite. Extremely cool gameplay. Recently also rerouted a lot of stuff with new skips, and it's just it's so amazing to me because it's such a huge 3D open world action game basically. And to think because when you think of blindfolded games, it's mostly the classics, older NES titles or N64. And it's really cool to me that even newer games on PS4 and these I don't know, these big games, because it's a huge RPG, that these kind of games are also possible fast to do blindfolded. That's really cool to me. And I don't know, I just really love the run. I had a lot of fun with it in the past. And if I could get any run into a marathon, then that would be it.
Now, for these other ones, do you have any other ones that you'd want to highlight in terms of a sales pitch? I know some of these games, I'm looking at them, and a bunch of them, Fusion, I think, and SM64 and Melee, you've done other categories of these at marathons before, but these are all different This is 70 star and adventure mode, and so do you have any particular sales pitch for hey, if you thought Break the Targets was cool, check this out?
Definitely. I can start with SM64, I guess, because that was on the last GDQ. That was only the 16-star category, and many people liked it a lot to see. And I can only say, if you guys enjoyed that, then 70-star is basically the same, but you collect 70 stars. That's
right.
Lots more,
even
more strats to see, lots more stars to see. It's the same principle, of course. Every star has a very cool setup and everything that I just follow through. But yeah, it's just so much more. And that's really amazing and cool. Many stages that you don't see at all in 16 star, for example, come in there, upstairs and everything. So that's definitely a very cool run to see if you have seen the other one before. Otherwise, Metroid Fusion, always. I would always recommend it. It's such a cool game, such fast-paced action going on. And I submitted this time both any percent and 100%. I have run 100% already once at ESA, and I technically think 100% is the better category for Fusion, because it lets you showcase all the crazy... it has very crazy Shine Spark setups at the very end of the run where you do the cleanup and get all the items you have not collected earlier. But any percent is also pretty interesting, because you don't collect all these items and you are pretty low on missile counts for boss fights and stuff. So it's more nerve-wracking, and in a marathon setting, such a risky run can also be very fun, in my opinion. Of course, not for me. I will be stressing out a lot, but I think it will be fun to see at least.
No, I mean I watched a bit. Of course, one of the runs that you gave to me was that ESA 100% run, and and I just couldn't get over. Obviously, we could talk more about the techniques, but just sort of the ability to stick with it for such an extended period of time. With the with Melee, what is the adventure mode of Melee? I forget about that. It's been years since I played that game.
Yeah, the adventure mode in Melee is basically like the story mode, I would say. Later in Brawl, they had this subspace.
Right, subspace emissary
thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And then Melee, they have like something similar. There are like a few 2D stages that you go through. So it's not only like fights like in classic mode on N64, for example, in classic, but it has like some platforming sections, some fight sections, and like some gimmicks. For example, you need to like there is an escape from the Metroid stage where you have like 2 minutes to get out of like a platforming section and stuff, which makes it pretty cool because for these stages there are like really cool setups. We can like, I use the Jigglypuff in the run, and for example his neutral B lets you like spin super fast and then like boost through the entire stage. So you can make use of like the attacks in a movement kind of way, which is very cool and unique, I think. And on top of that, lots of randomness too.
Good for the audience, right?
Yes, exactly. Because every fight, it's not restricted with items, so just random items can spawn in any time, and if like a bomb spawns on top of you, you're just dead. It happens. Or like the enemy grabs a hammer and goes berserk on you. That's all happened to me already, but I think it's very fun to see and watch. Again, very stressful for me probably, but that's the game. Exactly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I noticed. I saw this information. Of course, I mentioned on your Twitter account, and the tweet implied, if I'm reading it right, that you're not the only person submitting blindfolded speedruns. While we're discussing GDQ submissions, were there some other fellow blindfolded runners that you kind of wanted to shout out? And maybe if you know their submissions in particular, feel free to shout those out as well.
Definitely, yes. Our community has like flourished really hard the last year. It's like so many new runners and so many new runs. And definitely, as you can see, probably there has probably never been so many blindfolded submissions in GDQ so far. Like I think we have like 15 or like 10 to 15 runs there. It's really crazy. And what I really want to point out is 2 runs mostly. One from Crystal Saver. He submitted Celeste blindfolded. And he is grinding it really hard since a long time already. He's a good friend of mine too. And he recently got a very, very big new personal best too, particularly to submit to GDQ. And I mean, I think there's nothing else to say. Celeste and blindfolded, that's like a crazy combination.
Yeah, you're not kidding around with that kind of stuff, yeah.
Yes, and he does it also very fast. I think his last PB was now like close to 1:30 or like a sub 1:30 minute, 1 hour 30 minutes run, which is like insane to me. I don't know about you, but
no, I mean, good luck for me doing any of that stuff. I mean, 2D platforming has always been a weakness for me. So to see people, I mentioned before the pod that I talked to someone like Peking Boo, who did it on dance pads. To do it blindfolded, it just feels like an even extra layer to handle all that.
Yes, definitely. Other than that, I know Hyrillian Knight submitted both Myra's Mask and Ocarina of Time, any percent. Ocarina of Time I've also run myself a year ago or so. And the category has just gone down and down with time. What is, again, very interesting with this one is that it is extremely, extremely risky. It's like I think of all the blindfolded submissions, it's the most risky run. I know also Crystal Saver also thought about submitting it, but we decided to not because, it's just, there is so much that can go wrong. And that will be extremely interesting to see. Like that, I like kind of wish to see it because on one hand, I want to see like, wow, if he gets this on a big event, that would be so cool. But then again, I'm really scared. Like, what if he messes up, for example, like this last random bit? Then like, will he recover? But that will be a cool run nonetheless. So also, also A Link to the Past is in there with Parisian Player, I think, where he gets Master Sword. It's a very cool run. It's like not an any percent run or like 100% run. So it's not like a standard category if you want, because it's from a new game file until you get the Master Sword. But it's extremely cool. He gets to like many dungeons, does many cool strats, also classic game. So
sure, that doesn't hurt either.
I think, definitely. Yeah, I think all the blindfolded submissions this year are worth going in. So I really hope I'm low-key like wishing that we get like a tiny like blindfolded block maybe. So like 2 or 3 runs get in. That would be the best thing that could ever happen, probably. But yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
Will come in, I guess.
No, I'm definitely I'm curious to see what direction. I think these kinds of challenge runs have been they seem very popular to a broad audience, which suggests that that they would be of interest to to the games list. Of course, neither of us have any sort of affiliation, so we're just speculating. We don't really know what they're gonna do. But we'll see. I certainly would be exciting. I think some of the games that you have mentioned are of course all-time classics, the Zeldas, Celeste, etc., and have been at GDQ in many forms, and it would probably be cool to see them in these forms, because I find, like, for someone who's gotten tired of watching, say, your ordinary Super Mario 64, watching the Super Mario 64 16-star blindfolded was interesting, because to have the setups in that 3D space, you take particular steps, you do particular things, and it just helps you learn more about the game in the way that you learn more about the game when you do any kind of speedrunning with it. So it's definitely I hope to see something like that. Of course, the games list comes out on the 17th, sometime on the 17th of May, and we'll see what comes of it then. But let's go back in time. Let's find out, where does gaming start for you? How did you get into video games? Was that something that came from family, friends? What's the story there?
Mostly it came from very, very early on. Probably my brother. Like, I have an older brother, and kind of when I was born, he already had the SNES and stuff in our apartment. So basically, since I was very, very young, I was always watching him play games. And then when I was old enough, I also played myself. It's very funny because we have like family pictures where I am like really small, but holding like an N64 controller already and stuff. So just, I guess my brother really got me into it. Mostly I grew up with the N64. That was like my main console at the time. But yeah, that's how it all started, I guess.
What sort of games would you have had access to on SNES and N64? What was the big stuff?
Mostly what I remember playing a lot was Ocarina of Time, for example, and both the Bomberman titles on N64, so Bomberman 64 and Hero. Which is also a funny story, because at that time, like, neither me or my brother could, like, I think, read yet. So my mother had to like translate what was on the screen for us and stuff, but we still like understood the mechanics. So that was fun to play. And then on N64, we had like most of the classics, I would say, like Smash Brothers, Super Mario 64. On SNES, back in the days on SNES, we didn't play much because we sold the console relatively early, again, to like pawn shop or something.
Yeah.
So for the SNES, I don't have big memories from my childhood. The next big console that we got was the PS2, I think, afterwards, and there also PS2 with its huge library of games. There was just a lot going on.
Any big trend lines where obviously with the N64, like, I almost feel bad asking what games you played in N64, because like oftentimes it's like the same 3, which understandable, those are very good games. A PS2 though, that's a much broader library.
Definitely.
What were you checking out on PS2?
We had quite a big game collection on PS2. I was very, like, my favorite games there were like the Ratchet and Clank series, Jack and Dexter, Sly Cooper, also very, very big favorite of mine. So these kind of games were very, very interesting. But we also played like many like more like underground games, I would say, like Beautiful Joe, Okami. I saw you, I think, stream that earlier.
Yeah, I've been working on a casual playthrough of that right now. I never played it back then, so I'm glad to play it now. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, at least for me, a big favorite. It's a really cool game. So like also these kind of niche games, rather, I would call them, at least. I don't think they are like as popular as Ratchet and Clank, for example. So yeah, but honestly, in general, I think it was more like peaking in every kind of genre, in playing everything a bit. I don't think there was like a big focus on one particular thing for me.
Here's a milestone question, and this is something I like to ask, which is, as we've gotten older, at some point we take ownership of the hobby, and instead of being something that we, share with our family, share with our siblings, it kind of becomes ours and ours alone. And so to reflect that, I usually ask, is there a point that you would identify where, maybe you got a job and you got your own money, or you saved up in some other way and you went out and bought a console or computer, and that was yours and yours alone, and that was kind of the beginning of maybe where you are now as someone who plays games as a hobby, as as an adult or almost adult, depending on how you feel about it?
Yeah, I think definitely when I got my first PC, that was a big milestone for me. I was working part-time next to like high school, and I remember I bought my first PC. God, when was it? I don't even remember, but somewhere in like high school, definitely. For like, I think 700 euros it was at the time. So it was like very powerful at that time, at least. So I could play like all the new games, and Steam just became like a bigger, more popular thing. So all the games were also like accessible. It was not like super difficult to get all these games. And it was just like it should have been around like 2004, 5, like around the Half-Life 2 era, I think, with like Counter-Strike and Half-Life and all these classics. So that's like when I got my first like own PC, where I like started to get really into gaming, I think. Yeah, also World of WarCraft I played a lot back in the days, for example.
So I that's usually one of my other questions is, we're going to be focused on single player games. But, people play multiplayer games, and those include things like MMOs, MOBAs, even like couch co-op type stuff. So you're already talking about World of WarCraft. Is that something that you was just happened for a few years back then, or has it been something you stuck with through the years?
It was definitely something I played for a long time. I think I only quit like 3 or 4 years ago. But in that period, before that, I was like constantly on and off. It wasn't like 100% consistent thing, but mostly like when a new extension came, I played again for like half a year or so, and then like a back and forth kind of deal. But yeah, it was definitely one of my big hobbies.
Were you doing like weekly raids with a guild and stuff like that?
Also, yes. Okay. Also, it was also like sometimes when I started again, I was just like hunting for like achievements in like solo gameplay mostly, or like hanging out with like my IRL friends that also played the game. But I definitely also had periods where I went like full on raiding, and we had like a raid guild that wanted to like get bosses fast done when the new expansions came. So it was, I like both of them. I have to say the whole raiding experience is like less important to me, I think. So this whole competitive thing, PvP, I also never was really a big fan of. It was more for me like this open RPG world that I liked about it, I think.
That's one of the things that's interesting to me. So I've always been a spectator to that. I've had friends who have played it on and off over the years, and I've had some friends who are just like, would just gossip about guild drama, and that was like their primary outlet. But I had friends who also, were more interested in the cosmetic aspects and the crafting aspects, and I've always been kind of, I think I've become nicer about it over the years, because I've realized there are so many ways to play the game, and just the way, you described it, clearly that's the case. You can kind of fall into whatever niche you want to fall into. Are there other multiplayer games that you would highlight as being big parts of your gaming history?
Honestly, multiplayer games I haven't played too much, I think, otherwise. Like there are definitely like a few. I played lots of card games like Hearthstone, for example. Yeah, I guess it's also multiplayer because you play other people. But yeah, a bit of like CSGO when it came out, but it was nothing like really serious. I think definitely I'm more like the single player person.
All right. Well, so at this point in the pod, I've been trying to fish and I haven't fished it, so I'm just going to ask it more directly. Which did you discover first? Speedrunning or Twitch streaming? Or was it the same time?
Ooh. Honestly, I don't even know. Like I haven't before speedrunning. Before I discovered speedrunning, I definitely did not watch any Twitch channels or so. So it kind of happened simultaneously,
Okay.
I think.
Well, then I guess I'll ask, how did you first learn about speedrunning then?
Yeah, it was a Super Mario 64 run. I have no idea which one it was, to be completely fair. Just some speedrun where I first time saw that you can like go so fast in the game. And maybe it was even on like YouTube, just like a highlight of it was some marathon run, like GDQ or ESA, I think. So there was commentary and I understood like what they say, and it was like, whoa, this is so cool. And probably that's when I also started watching a few more Twitch channels about speedrunning.
Do you remember what channels you would have been watching?
Mostly Super Mario 64 stuff. I think like Cheese05 and like the classics also in SM64. And yeah, it was still a long time from then on that I like started myself to try something, to like realize that like it's something for everyone and not like that it's like this weird thing that only like the super good skilled players can do. Yeah.
No, I mean that's a good point, because I mean I guess then you've discovered it, you know about it, you're impressed and engaged, you like watching the streams of people doing Super Mario 64 fast. But you bring up a good point, which is, you know, and I can say I this held me back for a while too, which is, can I really do this myself? Like, what would be the reason? You know, I'm not, you know, I would have to put in thousands of hours to be as, you know, impressive as, you know, whoever, as Siglemic at Super Mario 64. And I'm not even that interested maybe in Super Mario 64. So, you know, what then? And so I guess I'll ask, what finally pushed you over the edge to try doing your own speedrunning?
The first time I tried something with like speedrunning is it was honestly I like never did like any runs or so. I just like was very interested in the glitches they do. So I think the first time when I sat down, I just tried like both SM64 and Ocarina of Time at the time to like, I just learned like some of the glitches, like I don't know, like this bomb clip that they do in Super Mario 64 in the beginning and these kind of things. And I just like started to practice like a bit more and more. I don't think there was any like particular reason. Just like I was interested. It looks cool. Like I wanted to try it myself. I had free time probably a lot, and yeah, then one came to the other. And I never really did any runs though. I just like practiced these single tiny glitches and things, and that's it. Then I kind of stopped again until I started blindfolding stuff directly.
Okay, so that's interesting, because I wasn't clear. You know, I kind of like glanced around your speedrun.com profile, but I wasn't quite certain to what extent you had done any, you know, regular speedrunning, you know, before getting into doing the blindfolded stuff. So I guess that leads us to the next question then, which is, what was the event that caused you to get interested in doing blindfolded runs?
Definitely the 100% Ocarina of Time run, or like not run, but like the charity marathon that runnerguy did. I don't remember exactly when it was, but yeah, runnerguy, a big Ocarina of Time runner and community member, he once finished a game in like 100% all collectible items for like a big charity event, I think. in like multiple days. It was like really long, and I remember I was like watching just the very end of it. This was like the tower escape sequence, and runnerguy, he like failed it very often. he because it's a very tight like movement, and there's a timer, and you have to like manage many things. And I saw him do like all these setups with this, like, for example, like 5 side hops to the right, then like turn around, do like 2 punches and stuff. And it looked like so setup based and like so cool to me that like I was like, this looks so interesting. Like it's like so different than like usual speedrunning with all these crazy setups. And I think that's when I just like thought that I will try it myself. And yeah, because I already learned something with like these glitches in SM64, I just was like, yeah, I will start with that.
So SM64 was your first effort at blindfolded speedrunning? Exactly,
yes.
Now, did you zero in a particular category or just set of challenges even?
Yes, it all started with just like getting single stars. Mm-hmm. It was back in 2017, I think, so a long time ago, where I just like got like a few stars here and there. There wasn't much of this done. I know there were like a few videos of like Chrism did some single stars, for example. It was like on YouTube, but it was like, I don't know, like a few stars, and mostly like not in the route of a 16-star run or so. Mm-hmm. So I just started like this challenge where I got like as many single stars as I could. And when I had like around 30 single stars blindfolded done, I was like slowly starting to think like maybe like a full game run would be possible. It's like there are like these Bowser stages. I know they are very difficult probably, but it doesn't seem impossible. And that's how I just like slowly I like had like some components already, and then I just like filled the blanks of my routes, routed them out, and that's how I also finished the first run back in the days.
Now, would you have been I want to ask about the kind of the video content of this, because when it comes to streaming especially, like speedrunning takes a lot of work, right? Like in order to get to that point of doing the first run, depending on the run, of course, you're doing a lot of work. And that's I like feel like speedrunning, at least by nature of doing multiple attempts, people often feel it's more geared towards live streaming than YouTube. Certainly with YouTube, you know, you could be doing hours and hours and hours and hours to finally result in a single YouTube run, you know, which hopefully people will enjoy. But again, it's a single video, and you've worked probably weeks, if not months. And for what you're doing, how long, you know, like, I guess, so what was your thinking in terms of the kind of content you were going to share? You had put all the work into figuring out that you could actually do a full game run instead of just some of the single star challenges that you had seen. Was your initial idea for output just, I'm going to put YouTube videos out there? Were you doing the Twitch streaming thing? Like, what was your approach?
I did not stream at that point yet. Okay. The first Twitch stream I did was, I think, like my first attempt of the full run. Mm-hmm. Just because, to have like a video, and because it's like better documented and everything. The other single star things I did upload on YouTube, but yeah, I think it was mostly not like an intention of like creating some kind of content, just like proving that this challenge is like possible to myself, kind of. So it wasn't really my goal to make like a big YouTube video or like a Twitch stream, anything. But yeah, I remember very clearly that on my first Twitch stream attempt, when I did like some practice of like some stages, I had like, of course, as Twitch stream starts, I had like 1 viewer or so, 2 viewers. And funnily enough, it was Cartoon24, which was like at the time the big blindfolded speedrunner who made the community, the moderator and all. So he like found me somehow very randomly in my Twitch stream, and yeah, since then, this whole community thing, we started building up further, and it was very, very cool that he found me there. So I don't know. I probably would have still continued streaming, But like this, I knew like, yeah, there's like interest in this, what I do. It's like cool. I can share it with others while live streaming. So that's when I started to actually like realize that I can focus more on like actually streaming the content and not just like doing it for myself.
So it's interesting that you had kind of done a lot of the initial groundwork for your first big challenge anyway before going into the Twitch streaming aspect of it. Because I was kind of curious about that too, because I know from watching the marathon VODs, like going into marathons, I have to imagine that your prep as a blindfold runner is going to be a little different than the prep that an ordinary runner would do. Because me as a like an ordinary runner, I'm going in thinking about like, I want to make sure I say this thing here, do this commentary, make sure I have a certain rapport with my couch commentators. But the runs that I had watched of yours, you always had a single commentator, and of course, since you're relying on audio cues and other things, you're not listening to any of the the nation comments or any of that. And so I guess, like, do you have any particular things that you would want to tell us about how you prepare in terms of like what you tell your co-commentator? Your co-commentators have all been great, by the way. Like, they've all done, I'm sure you've watched back some of the marathon VODs.
Yes,
they've done a good job. So I'm just curious, like, if you have any, like, I can't talk for an hour, half an hour to 2 hours. What's the prep that goes into doing a blindfold run for a marathon?
Yeah, so for marathons, it's like you said, like pretty different. Because it depends on like two things. I definitely always need a commentator because, as you said, I cannot speak basically. I have to count all the time and all these things. Funnily enough, I tried it one time in a little German marathon where I commentated myself, and it's too much.
Yeah.
But mostly I try to find someone who knows my run and like who would like to enjoy commentating it, because I have like many notes, and I always try to provide my commentators also with like all the interesting stuff that I like know about the run. Because even if like the commentator knows the run from like watching, for example, there's like so much going on in like these setups that you just basically cannot pick up if you just watch the run. So I try to always pinpoint like aspects that like are worth mentioning, for example, or like which are like cool facts for the run. Mostly I try to find someone that is either like in the blindfolded community of us, so he has this knowledge of how does the blindfold aspect works, or I try to find someone who is in the community of the speedrun that I do. For example, like in Metroid, I had a commentator from the Metroid community, a good friend of mine, and he knows all this, because it makes a very interesting dynamic when you have someone who also does not know much about the blindfold, but he knows a lot about the visual speedrun. Because then you have like this contrast that he can talk both about the speedrun very well, but he can also like on real time react to like things that you don't usually do and put that into like highlight, because like, wow, he skips this item, he uses later maybe, I don't know. It's like a very interesting dynamic for me. So I always try to go for like either a community member of the game I play or like a blindfolded runner. That's like the best option, I think. And I hand them commentation notes about my run and everything. I talk with them mostly. I try at least, and like that, it works out, I guess.
Yeah, no, and I think I noticed too, at least from the small cross section that I had watched, just what you had said, which is that sometimes their fellow blindfolded runners, sometimes with the Metroid Fusion run, from the community, and it's really interesting to get the sort of constant like, did you really do that? Like from the non-blindfolded runners is interesting. Whereas I feel like with the fellow blindfolded runner, there is still some sort of admiration, but it's sort of a more comrade, more of a similar like, I understand that frustration. Sort of. Do you watch back a lot? Like what's your approach to watching back a marathon? Have there been any like discoveries where you like watched back a marathon run, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened or something?
Yeah, it happens basically in every marathon run. Like it's just very crazy. Like I always rewatch my runs, and also like after my Twitch streams, for example, when I do attempts, I have to rewatch it because it's like a big part of the learning that you actually see what you do and realize like, oh, this looks so different than I imagined, for example. So rewatching is definitely a very important part. In marathon runs, especially, there is just so much going on that you are like so focused. You are like, there's this bit of marathon stress, this full focus mode. So you don't really realize like tiny mistakes that you do maybe. But then when you rewatch the VOD, it's like, whoa, what am I doing there? Like it's super crazy. Or when you, I think it was in Metroid Zero mission once in a marathon run I did, that I was like so close to dying. I had like, I think 1 health or so, like out of like a lot. And I was just like chilling there, like super calm, because I didn't know that I have so low health. But my commentator was like freaking out, like, Jesus, he was so close to the enemy. So it's very fun for me also to rewatch it. It's like a whole new experience.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of fun, especially with your the AGDQ 2021 for Super Mario 64, because you know it often happens that if there is a big donation incentive upcoming, the host will mention that donation incentive a lot. And so for your run, we got to hear a lot about Rugby Baby, which is very funny because I had Froob, Froob McGuffin on the podcast some weeks ago, and I also I love Froob, but it was just very funny to be like, Froob, you did it. You really cast the shadow of Rugby Baby all over this run. I hope you're happy. And he sent me like an apology meme on Twitter. So that was shout outs to Froob. When it comes to Twitch streaming, I lurked some of your streams, I think in the past week or so, and because I think I caught you working on individual stars in 120 star. I think, yeah. And do you have any sort of like on-off approach to Twitch streaming? When I mean on-off, I mean, you know, sometimes I assume you're testing things, you're actually trying to do the stars, and then also sometimes you're theorizing and working on it. But of course, you have a Twitch chat going, and I imagine to some extent you have to just rely on moderators. But do you have any particular approach when it comes to being a blindfolded speedrunner doing streams?
Yes, it's very different, and it's on one hand very sad because when you do runs, you just cannot interact with chat, which is kind of, yeah, it's like the whole point of Twitch to make like this community come together and chat around and everything. So I still really don't like the aspect that I just cannot interact with chat like at all during runs. But yeah, that's why I like to also stream like my routing and like other challenges like the single stars, for example, because then I like have most of my time my eyes open and can read the chat, and then when I do attempts I'm just like on for a tiny bit basically. But yeah, it's very different, I guess, than usual. But yeah, I also as I said, with like theorizing the strategies and all, I mostly always try to stream like something that I have already like ready, like runs, because at least, especially in the past, I always did all the stratting and practicing offline and just streamed my runs. But yeah, recently I also just stream my routing. Like, why not? Some people find it interesting, so it's an opportunity to talk with chat. It's a nice exchange there. So yeah, recently I also included my routing and everything to the stream.
Yeah, no, I mean, I imagine if you can find a way to make it engaging, it allows you to get into that part of Twitch streaming that, as you said, you're kind of cut off from if you're actively working on runs. All right. Oh, the other thing I wanted to highlight too was, speaking of Twitch streaming, I think you were also only a few months ago you did make Twitch partner. Is that right? Yes, that is correct. Yeah, congratulations on that. Was there anything in particular you feel like contributed to that? I mean, it feels like if from a million miles away, I might say the obvious answer is SM64 at AGDQ 2021, but nothing happens overnight. And so if you had any sort of comments on like, oh, I really think my success came from here or there, I would love to hear that. Yeah, definitely. It was a big and very lucky situation for me, I think, because yeah, it definitely was
many aspects falling into one place at the right time, because I had the GDQ run, which a few days before this GDQ run, there was this big controversy about the blindfolded cheetah in SM64. It's like a YouTube video came out, which by now has like 6.5 million views. So just because like in the video, it wasn't talked about me or anything, just about a cheetah who tried blindfolded.
Yeah.
But because of this video, so much attention got to like blindfolded speedrunning in general. And like a few days after this whole big hype about this, my GDQ run dropped. And on top of that, it was like my most famous speed game, I would say. Like other games I done blindfolded are like not so popular. So it was all these combinations of things together that like suddenly that my stream like blew up a lot. Because I also streamed like 16-star blindfolded runs in SM64 before all of this, which, yeah, I still had like, I don't know, like my loyal 15 viewers or whatever. And yeah, this just really blew up in the Super Mario community, I think, and in general with all the GDQ watchers. So it was a very lucky situation for me, I would say.
I mean, hey, you take those, right? Absolutely.
Yeah,
it isn't like you hadn't been, like you just picked up blindfolded speedrunning a Super Mario 64.
No, definitely
You've been
not.
working on it for a while, right? So this is not, there's certainly not any kind of low hanging fruit. You had put in the effort and time. Another thing I wanted to ask on, we're hanging out on the Twitch streaming topic. I think I've been finding recently with with certain guests on the podcast is that depending on what they do, they have certain kind of pet peeves when it comes to people coming in the chat and saying certain things. For example, I had a Souls runner on a few weeks ago who is confirmed tired of people saying get good when it comes to Souls games. No one really wants to hear that anymore. And I was curious. I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring it up, but you kind of already hit on it tangentially here. On YouTube, I think everyone rolls their eyes whenever cheating and speedrunning get brought up together in a YouTube context. Right? I feel like a lot of people are very, very sick of it. In your streaming time, especially doing the blindfolded thing, because of just what you said with the that particular video. Do you have people coming in and like almost? I would worry that people would be almost adversarial, that they would express skepticism of like, you're not really doing this like this. Do you have to deal with that a lot? Is that a problem at all when streaming for you?
It's not really a problem.
Okay.
It happens definitely, like in every blindfolded, like not even for me, but in our entire community, like whatever blindfolded speedrun Twitch stream you watch, there's always someone in chat is like, this can't be real, like haha, like right, I don't know what they say. But really like maybe not surprisingly, but it's very nice to see, because the majority of people, they in case something like this happens, they like try to defend you, I guess, or like they come with like arguments that why this is actually real in like a very normal and good way. So I think really the community we have like around is very, very nice and helpful, and we try our best to make the runs believable, because it's of course a valid like concern, like he's just sitting there with the blindfold but someone else plays the game or so. It's like, yeah, of course it can be, but we try like our best to always show, like, for example, before I do runs, I like to like point my webcam, how I turn off my monitor, how I like put my blindfold in front of the webcam and stuff. Or in GDQ when I had my TV behind me, for example. Like we try like our best to reduce all these assumptions, but still you cannot convince everyone, and that's totally okay, I guess. That's like if someone does not want to, like, does not believe in this, then let them just not watch it, I guess. Like everyone has their own problems.
Yeah, like blind faith isn't for everyone, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Oh man. So that's actually a good segue. Something I noticed that of course I'm when I'm scoping out guests and I'm looking at what they've done, I'm checking out their links, and And most people have their standard set of links, their Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. But when I looked at your Twitch page, I noticed that there is one other link that most people don't have, which is a link for the specific. You have a standalone website for Blindfolded Gaming, blindfoldedgaming.com, which I noticed that you are, I guess, one of the staff members for. Were you someone that helped found this group, or did you come in after this started? What's the story here?
So yeah, this is basically the story of our whole Blindfolded community, I guess. Right now we are 5 moderators. When I came in back in 2017, it was there were three moderators, which was Katoon, Parisian player who now submitted A Link to the Past, and Ponk, who is a blindfolded Super Metroid speedrunner. And these 3 people, they just gathered and made this community. Even before 2017, they gathered a few people in the Discord, and they tried to search all the blindfolded runs that were out there at the time. And yeah, this really just with time evolved more and more. I came in 2017 too. I did from then on many blindfolded runs and helped them out. At some point also Crystal Saver, who now submitted Celeste, for example, he also joined our moderator team. And yeah, by now the Discord is really, as I said, we were 15 people, maybe 20. Now we have 200, 300, 400 members with a lot of runners, a lot of different kind of runs. So we were keeping track of all the runs on just an Excel sheet for the longest time until it was recently. It was last year. Last year, Crystal Saver just offered to make this website for us because he wanted to look for a personal project to work on anyways, and this was a good opportunity. And we've of course often thought about it, but we just didn't have the technical know-how how to realize that. So Crystal Saver just went ahead and made us this amazing website, which is really cool.
It's a good website. It works really well. It looks great. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can find all the blindfolded runs there. It's still a manual process for us because we still search all the runs that we can find. Now we have also a submission form on the website, which is cool because we found lots of new runs through that already. Many people from outside who never heard about our community, for example, they submitted there and were yeah, I did this run 3 years ago. Isn't that cool? And yeah, it's really nice because we found many new runners through that, and our community grows, and we have this central hub with all the runs. It's a very nice thing, I think.
Yeah, I'm definitely really impressed. I find it when I find people doing particular types of challenges when it comes to how they interface with the game. Some of these efforts can still be pretty standalone, or they'll have technical support, but they won't necessarily have this is definitely impressive. In the number of runs, the number of people involved, the way it looks. Is there any sort of? I'm just curious. Obviously, it's great to have the community, and the community is an end to itself in terms of being able to discover new runners, new runs, provide support for each other. I can only imagine the amount of strat ideas that get thrown around in the Discord. Are there any other sort of goals for the community in terms of any community activities, events, things like that? I'm just curious, what's on the future for blindfolded gaming besides just continuing to enjoy doing blindfolded runs.
Yes, we've been thinking about that too a lot. We still don't have very concrete ideas. Our one big goal in the future would be to set up a marathon with only blindfolded runs playing. That is something we talked about fairly recently, but yeah, we would need to find still someone who would host this, for example, and all the organizational stuff for that. We have checked with all the runners if there would be interest or and there is a lot of interest, definitely. So this definitely might be a thing in the near future at some point. So a blindfolded speedrun marathon, basically, where we don't, because as you might tell, it's very difficult with blindfolded runs to set an estimate very well.
Yeah.
Because we need to just put such a high block of plus time onto it just because of safety. There is so much that can go wrong. And yeah, because of that, like there might always be like half hour, 40 minutes like breaks in between runs. So we thought about like just filling that with like some videos about blindfolded speedrunning that we prepare in beforehand, maybe like how to stretch some things or like little tutorials or so, just like to make this whole thing a bit more fluid. So we have all these ideas that are like right now being processed, still nothing concrete, but this is something we definitely want to work towards, I think.
Cool. No, I mean, now that I'm aware of it, and that's also part of why I wanted to just talk about it, so more people know, that this community exists and, is active. And certainly, because I mean, this kind of resource too, this is kind of the reason that I love something like, like speedrun.com, is because a lot of people might learn about speedrunning through a big event and they'll see big games, but they'll say, well, what about my favorite game from my childhood? Mm-hmm. And now that as, speedrunning has grown to such an extent, you can then again redo this with certain other niches. You can say, wow, I really love, some, I don't know, Crash Bandicoot. Has anyone done Crash Bandicoot blindfolded or something like that? And just as an example of a game that is certainly popular enough to have a healthy speedrunning community, but now you can go to a resource for specifically doing a blindfolded challenge run. And that's neat. That's just, very cool. Certainly, I'll be linking, I ordinarily link all of the guests' social channels in the podcast description, but of course I will also be linking to the Blindfolded Gaming website. So if you're listening to this after the fact, you can certainly find the URL there. It's also a very easy URL to remember. It's just blindfoldedgaming.com. Very straightforward.
Exactly.
So that's pretty easy. I want to do some takes here. I want to get some spicy takes in your speedrunning career, your blindfolded speedrunning career. We already know that your first game was Super Mario 64.
Yes.
Of all of the speedruns that you have done, what is your favorite? I think I might know the answer to this. I feel like you've already said it, but what is your favorite one that you've done so far?
My favorite one, I go with Nier Automata again.
Yeah, that was my guess. Yeah.
I think mostly, maybe not even because it's the coolest run, but just I love the game so much. And this connection when you have like the speed run of this one game that you really like, and you could just play hours and hours anyways, and you just combine it with like your hobby. That's like so cool to me. And yeah, I'm really good friends with many of the community members too. So it's like this. It's like my home base where I like to just hang out and have my fun there. So all in all, I would still say Nier Automata A ending Blindfolded was my favorite run so far.
Awesome. No, that's I try not to involve myself in the podcast too much, but it is likely in the next month or so I will do my first casual play of Nier Automata. So I'm kind of curious to see what it's all about. Certainly, just broadly. What about the flip side though? Of you, let's say there's a game that you attempted to do a blindfold speedrun of. Maybe you finished it, but you're never doing it again. You're not returning to this project. What's your least favorite?
Oof, many. Oh god.
I mean, you can name a few if you want. You don't have to pick a single one. You can list off a few.
So, wow, where I won't return probably is all the crazy RNG heavy stuff that I've done. For example, Pokemon Blue NSC, like the glitched any %, where it's a very short category. It's like 16 minutes long, even blindfolded, where you do like a crazy glitch warp to the credits at the end. And the thing is, you need to get very good RNG because you have to avoid random Pokemon encounters. And at one point in the visual speedrun, they do a manipulation, which is like super difficult and frame perfect and all, to catch a like sparrow. And we just run around in the grass and hope that we get one. And for example, in my PB now, I just walk into one tile of grass and instantly I got the sparrow. And then later on, I messed up some menu, which could have saved me like another 10 seconds or so. But I just know I don't want to go through this again to like get this time saved because, just don't. too much stress and
Yeah,
time.
that sounds like a lot. I couldn't even imagine. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's bold of you to try and make it work, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you don't highlight?
The other part are runs that I actually would really like to do, but that are just way too long. Because, as you might imagine, in Blindfolded, it's what I usually say is like a good Blindfolded run is like double the length of the visual run. And as you can tell, like not all speedruns are like 20 minutes, 40 minutes long. So I did, for example, both Kingdom Hearts games, which is like a 2 to 3 hour visual speedrun.
Yeah.
And then I sit there for 7-8 hours blindfolded. And while I like the game and it's super fun, it's just so long and exhausting that like, yeah, I do like one run and that's it. That like I have done it. It's okay, and I'm good.
How about a game that you would like to speedrun, but you have not gotten around to it yet, whether because of time reasons or it just doesn't fit with what you're doing right now?
Oof. Many. Oh god, this is an even bigger list than before. I have so many projects that I left like unfinished or like half finished or like so I can throw you a little list if you want.
Throw me a few. Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts 3, very unfortunate because the entire game is doable, and then in the middle of the game of the any percent run is like a tiny mini game where you have to ride like a ship, and it's just not possible blindfolded. There's too much going on. You couldn't brute forces even if you take like 3 hours. So yeah, this is like a tiny mini game that ruins the whole run, and you cannot do any percent, which is very sad in my opinion, because I done like Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts 2, and I wanted to go for like the trilogy.
Yeah.
But nope, the tiny ship mini game destroyed it. So that's pretty sad. I was working a lot on Undertale Blindfolded 2. I finished most of the strats, but then again, like at the very end, there are like 2 very difficult bosses, which are possible. I confirmed it. I made like theory scripts that like confirm that it's okay. It's possible theoretically, but yeah, it's just like if I imagine something so painful after like a 2-hour run, and then I still have to do like this super crazy boss. I would rather focus on other things. Same with kind of Fire Emblem on DS Shadow Dragon. I routed quite a while.
Okay.
The same thing. Very cool game. I would love to speedrun it, but there is so much RNG going on that it's like, yeah, I would do like maybe one run if I'm lucky. If I'm lucky, then I will finish one run in my life. But do I really want to invest like 200, 300 hours into this for like this RNG fest? What I really want to return is Metal Gear Solid 3. I've done the like, I don't know, there's like in the very beginning of the game you do like a little section before Snake falls down like a bridge. It's like the prologue basically of the game. Yeah. And this I've done to like test out the mechanics of the game and stuff. So this I've done like as a little preview blindfolded already. But my problem with this game is that I cannot for the life of me find a good controller solution to make it happen, because the PS3 controller on PS3, the game, it sucks because there's no rumble on the DualShock 3 controller. And for the roll animation, like when Snake does a roll, you very often can't hear the sound because of enemy footsteps and stuff. So the sound just gets eaten. Where on Xbox, you have a rumble every time you do a roll. So you have like confirmation, you can count the rolls, for example, even if you don't hear them. But then again, on Xbox, I cannot find a solution that has notches, like a notched controller. So when I think I press straight up, he's running like up right or like up left or like a tiny bit not up, and that ruins all my setups. So I just cannot figure out a good solution for my controller. I used for a long time on PS4 at least a fighting stick to get notches.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you want notches on PlayStation, you got to get a fight stick, probably. Yeah. So
I have not returned to this project yet on PS3, maybe with a fighting stick. That might be a thing at some point, but yeah, I just have so many projects. It's incredible.
Well, let's make the next one will be hopefully a little lower stress question. How about your favorite speedruns to watch that you have no plans to run yourself?
I really, really enjoy to watch Ocarina of Time Hundo runs, so 100% runs. I'm like really into it. I wouldn't say that I'm not interested, but at least Blindfolded, it will probably never happen a single segment Hundo run because of the length and the randomness. So that's the one. And visually, I have kind of no interest in running it too. So so if anything, I would do like maybe a segmented 100% run of this. But there is so much random stuff going on in the game with, like, again, mostly the mini games are the worst. Like, it's always the mini games, I tell you. Like the tiny, like, shooting gallery and the fishing and all these tiny things that have nothing to do with the real game, they always ruin the blindfolded runs. So yeah, Ocarina of Time Hundo.
No, that's a solid answer, especially when I always feel like it's funny when you have the speed run that has like the poison pill in it, and you just described it very concisely in terms of mini games being a poison pill often for attempting blindfolded stuff. But but it's true broadly still. Like there might be other reasons, anybody would not want to do any sort of run, visual or blindfolded. All right, so here's a question. We've been talking for a while now about different runs, and some of these blindfolded runs, as you mentioned, can be quite long. Often, a good blindfolded run will be double the length of a comparable visual speed run. And so, something I found myself wondering, especially when you linked the ending E Nier Automata speedrun, which is like a 10-hour recording. Do you find yourself concerned at all with any sort of eyesight issues? Does it affect your eyesight at all to be... I just wouldn't know, right? It seems excessive to me, but I don't know if it's actually bad.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, like under the blindfold, at least I have my eyes closed, and I don't think it's much worse than staring at the monitor for 10 hours. I think it's actually probably better.
Probably better, yeah. It doesn't have the eye. Right, I mean, it would certainly not be the same flavor of eye strain if there were any strain involved, and it sounds like there isn't. I mean, I guess I asked that because I also usually ask about do you take any sort of preventative measures for good hand or wrist health? Certainly speedrunning often involves a lot of repetitive motion. Do you find yourself dealing with that at all? Have you done anything?
Yes, I am constantly doing it since I also have had lots of troubles with my wrist already. Especially since before I started speedrunning, I was also pretty into rhythm games. So they had already started. And yeah, all the button mashing in speedruns doesn't help with it, I think. So yeah, I try to... before and after every stream, I try to stretch my wrists with like different stretches, mostly that I find on YouTube, and just follow them. And I find it very important. I also have like on my Twitch channel like a point reward thing. I think it's very cool because the Twitch chat can just like remind me sometimes to like stretch a bit or like these kind of things. I think it's very, very important, especially if you plan to if you have still so many plans that you want to do, and it would be very sad to not be able to do something because of pain in hands.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it sounds like you're already on top of it, but of course, the advice I always give to anyone listening is that you pay attention to your body. If there is any sort of pain, you want to address that through stretches, other measures. Certainly guests I've had on in the past have been big fans of compression gloves, things like that. Whatever works for you, and it's not going to be, there's not a one size fits all solution. But as you get older, you discover that more things become features of your body than maybe necessarily you didn't want. And so doing what you can to avoid that kind of thing, especially for gaming and speedrunning, is a good idea. So you already kind of touched on this when you were talking about Metal Gear Solid 3, but I wanted to ask, especially as someone who does blindfolded speedrunning, do you have takes for favorite and least favorite controllers?
Oh, yes. I don't know if I'm like crazy, but I think I have like one of the biggest controller collection at home ever. I just have like every controller in like 4 or 5 different variants. For Blindfolded, it's the biggest pain in your entire life to find a good controller, because mostly, like, by now I only play with GameCube controllers. Like, everything I can find, if it's compatible with the GameCube controller, that's like, yes, please. Just because it has notches.
Notches, yeah.
It has good notches, and it has like good buttons that are like, yeah, very responsive. And the problem again though is, if you buy 2 GameCube controllers, they have different, like they are different. There's no controller that is the same. So I had it so often already that lately in Super Mario 64, for example, I plug in a controller, I do a strat, and the exact same inputs with the different controller don't work anymore. Just because the notch is like 0.5 millimeters off of the other controller or so. Or like the dead zone is like a tiny bit different, and it just ruins the setup because it's so precise. And then you sit there, like, if you do it like in a run, you sit there after like 2 hours and wonder, like, yeah, why does my strat not work? Oh yeah, I changed controllers yesterday. It's like really stupid. It's like I hate this about Blindfolded. So best controller still GameCube though, even though it has the dead zone issues and stuff. Keyboard is very cool because it's complete analog. There's nothing that can go wrong. But that again, keyboard Blindfolded is another very not so compatible thing because you need to find the buttons and all. So I still like keyboard a lot. GameCube controller. I have like, I don't know if I can show it into the camera quickly. From Hori, I have a GameCube controller for USB, which acts as an Xbox controller.
Okay.
It looks like a GameCube controller, completely normal, but it has 4 shoulder buttons. Mm-hmm. So it acts, the PC recognizes it, and the Nintendo Switch, I think, too, as a normal controller, but it has notches, it has the GameCube features and stuff. So that's very good for PC games. I really like this thing. Worst controller, everything else that doesn't have notches.
I can only imagine that. Like, I was just thinking about, like situations when I've played games casually where I need to like use a thumbstick to input a fighting game style command, right? Like do a dragon punch input with a thumbstick. And that's just never fun, right? And that's never fun. I'm looking at the controller and I can't get it to do what I want it to do. And I can only imagine if you're looking to consistently go straight.
Yes, that's the hardest thing. That's number 1.
Yeah, you just can't do. Also, I just want to note, if for whoever's watching the YouTube video, if you're watching YouTube, you did not have a stroke. The camera is flipped. So that's why the GameCube controller looked like a backwards mutant. Don't worry about it. That's just the camera being mirrored. I just saw it and I was like, someone's going to watch this and they'd be like, do you have a left-handed GameCube controller? I'm like, no, that was just the camera being flipped. You know, it's Twitch streams. We like to make things look nice as possible. Usually it comes up if someone has like a poster in the background, you know, and I happen to flip it and you see the poster, but like you can figure it out then. But like a controller, it's not clear. You know, it's like, oh, I have that same guitar, but it's left-handed. It's like, no, actually that is a left-handed guitar sometimes. You never really know. Actually, on that note, you mentioned you did some rhythm game stuff, and I couldn't help but notice from watching the VODs of your marathon runs that a lot of your strategies are based on rhythms, whether those rhythms be external rhythms, you know, for example, music, or just simply, you know, counted interior rhythms that you're counting to yourself. You mentioned rhythm gaming is something that you've done. Or are you also doing music stuff besides that, or is it really just rhythm gaming was kind of a big thing for you for a bit?
I don't really play any instrument or so. I've done some like keyboard playing, not good at all, but I'm very interested in music. I like have a lot of instruments that I just never play. But yeah, mostly it was just rhythm games, to be fair. It's just like a general interest in instruments, I think, that I have.
What sort of rhythm games were you into? What was high? I feel like the period of gaming that we've discussed, there are some rhythm games that really came and went. So I'm curious to see what was important to you.
Well, it started all with Guitar Hero for sure. It was the first Guitar Hero 2 on PS2, I think. That was my first one, and then all the Guitar Heroes were pretty cool. I played a lot, but also not like on really crazy levels, like trying to full combo like the hard songs and everything. Then I don't know, bit before I started Blindfolded speedrunning, I also started Osu, or like Os. I still don't know how to.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know what the answer is either, but I know what you're talking about.
So that I played for like 3-4 years, like really close to every day. Also try to like get like more into the high level things, and it's a very intense rhythm game, I would say. It's like it has like a very close connection to speedrunning in some sense, because it's all about like self-improvement and trying to like basically like PB in different songs, because you just get a bit further, you get a bit of a better combo, and so yeah, that's what I mostly played, I think.
Cool. No, I mean, I definitely.
Within OS, or like also, there are also the different modes, I guess, which is notable, because there's also Taiko, which is a standalone game. And Taiko, for example, I also played a lot, and Osumania, which is kind of Guitar Hero, but it's like Beatmania, for example, too. So basically, all of these I kind of played on the same level too. Yeah.
Cool. No, that's neat. I knew a bunch of people who were, of course, I mean, Guitar Hero is huge, Rock Band was huge, and I've known fewer people who stuck around with it, and so I'm really, it's one of the things I enjoy asking about, just to see which of the sort of like, I don't want to say post Guitar Hero, but you know, the flavors of it that people have stuck with through the years. I've definitely been pleasantly surprised to find more and more speedrunners who still have, you know, some sort of a rhythm game thing going on, you know, in terms of, you know, just their interest in gaming in general, even outside of what they do, streaming or speedrunning or whatever the case might be. On the subject of equipment, I did want to ask, so now you, see, this is funny, because when I get into the discussion of equipment, especially when it comes to capturing and then also what kind of TVs, you're doing some older games. You're doing some Super Mario 64, Smash 64, Melee, etc. And so these are games that in our modern times present some challenges in terms of what display do you use, how do you convert the signal if you're converting, how do you capture the signal, and one of the chief concerns here is often latency of the signal getting to the display. Now that's probably less important for you, I would guess, at least in terms of doing runs. But what is your approach to this? Do you have big expensive converters, or do you just have a CRT and you just hook it up directly? What's your approach?
No, I have literally the cheapest, oldest monitor on earth, probably. Like I really like, I don't need it. That's the good part about it. I use for most of my games my Wii, because it has like most of the N64 games. It has Wii games, it has GameCube games, and a GameCube controller plug. That's like all I can wish for. So my Wii is kind of my go-to console right now, and I just have like a tiny HDMI converter, so that the Wii doesn't have HDMI by default. So you just plug it into the AV plug, and then one HDMI cable to the capture card does the job. And yeah, my monitor, really, I just use it for like my stretching and stuff. And when I do runs, I turn the thing off to save some electricity. Like, why not? So yeah, I am not really concerned about good monitors or like latency issues, thankfully. If that still would come on top of that all, then.
See, this is really funny that we're having this conversation right now, because I don't know how much time you spend on Twitter, but I couldn't help but notice that this morning the RetroTink 5X was going on first pre-order, and there's a bunch of people who are like, oh my god, can I get a pre-order, and this and that, and here we are to like, oh, I turn off the TV, really. It's
one of the funny side effects of this.
No, it's definitely it's interesting to think about. Of course, I think it's part of speedrunner brain is that you look at all the consequences of your actions, and you look for the features in the game world, and this is kind of coming to real life. It was like, well, if I'm doing this, then I really don't need to spend the time worrying about latency on the TV or whatever the case might be. So that's just but it's funny to spell it out, to really say it. Let's talk about this. Okay.
What is maybe more important to me is sound latency, though, because that sometimes does play a role. And fortunately, with my Wii, for example, the HDMI adapter that I have has a direct headphone plug too. Oh. So I basically get the sound as fast as possible from the Wii to my ears. That's the problem if you use, for example, I don't know, even just emulators. Mm-hmm. Emulators on PC are good and all, but most of the time, even if you don't notice, there's a point something latency issue with audio, and it messes you just up really strangely. And especially for Blindfolded, if the sound is off, then it's it's not so nice.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, I can only imagine. We've already talked about how even the the imprecision of analog sticks can mess you up, and I imagine similarly when it comes to making some of these jumps, doing these things that you're doing in games, if the sound is even a slightly bit off, and you're relying on the sound cue, that's going to create a problem.
Yep, definitely.
All right, let's talk about some specific games. So I like to get a kind of a sense of how you ended up running particular games. We started off with Super Mario 64. That was a thing that you had worked on, of course, has now kind of bloomed fully as something that really helped get your name out there with the Blindfolded run at AGDQ 2021. But your first GDQ appearance was actually Smash Brothers 64. I remember catching this one live. This all characters break the targets, right?
Yes, exactly.
And how did you end up speedrunning this? I assume Smash 64 was a game that you played as a kid. What made you come back to it as a speedrun game?
It's a very, very fun story. I still can't believe that I played this at GDQ, honestly, because this run, it was right when I was moving houses, and Smash 64 was the only game I had around at the time with my N64, so I literally just played it because I didn't have anything else at the moment. Everything was in card boxes and stuff already. So I just plugged it in one day, and it was 1 weekend or so when I just rolled it all of this and did a run, recorded it just for fun. It was nothing I spent like usual, because when I do a blindfolded runs, it takes months and months of practice and preparation. And Smash 64, I did a weekend for myself, uploaded a video, and that's it. And then it came into GDQ, and I was okay, I submitted all these month-long work projects, and then this tiny weekend thing got in. And the thing is, from there on, I really improved the strats, though. I really started to grind it out and really made it more worthy in a sense. But yeah. It's very fun. I still don't really comprehend how this game got in, but it was cool. I don't complain.
Do you feel do you have a favorite character out of all the characters? Because there's some really, especially for the blindfolded purposes, some interesting applications of things. I have a guess, but what would be your favorite of the characters in Break the Targets?
Favorite character? I honestly really like Pikachu.
Yep, that was my guess.
Just because it is the whole Break the Target stage is so fast. It looks like the visual thing, basically, just a tiny bit slower. And Pikachu is super cool because you can shoot the neutral B electro shock thing, and you can just snipe targets from far away. You don't need to really see them. That's the cool thing too. You just do your setup and it's done. So Pikachu is definitely one of the cooler ones.
Yeah, I would either Pikachu or Ness. I feel like Ness was also very, very interesting because you're not watching. Just use the up B, whatever.
Yes. Yeah, I think Ness is definitely the viewer favorite. I think.
That's really so. Now with a game like Smash 64, I guess that's really the primary sort of speedrun target for that game, in terms of for what you're doing, right? Because you probably don't have. Did you have any future plans for Smash 64? Would you return to this for any reason?
There is still bought the platform, like the other mini game. But the thing is, it's the same kind of deal, like break the targets, like the tiny stages with every character. But there is much more cycles going on because all the platforms move, and you would need to keep track of lots of things. So while this would be interesting and definitely possible, it would be like very difficult to route. It would be lots of work to put this together. Otherwise, there's classic mode that is run primarily visually too right now. But I've done that Blindfolded 2 already, and since it's kind of an just RNG grind without much skill, you just spam the same attack over and over and hope that you hit the enemies.
Right. Yeah, it's not
really that fun. Yeah, it's like a one-time thing that you do, and then it's like, yeah.
Yeah, one of the fun things about Break the Targets was, and this is also maybe good for a marathon. I mean, you can tell me whether or not that's the case. But, if something goes awry, there's an easy way to just restart the level.
Yes, definitely. It's very, very convenient that you can like reset mistakes very fast. It's funny because recently I also talked with Crystal Saver, and he said the same thing about Celeste. Because Celeste is very nice to run, because if you fall down, you just spawn at the same screen again, and the whole game is just like comprised of tiny screens after each other. So you never need to have like this whole picture in your mind that like everything connects, but you just need to focus on one stage, one picture all at the time, and then I think that's really the point of these kind of runs. It's like it makes it very much easier and more enjoyable to run.
Yeah, no, definitely. It definitely helps kind of make it more digestible, I feel like, for everyone involved.
Yes.
So what about, I'm curious how Metroid Fusion came into it, because I feel like I watched Super Mario 64, all-time popular game, classic. Smash Brothers, the blindfolded targets, like, okay, that's like pretty, that's nice, digestible, discrete chunks. Metroid Fusion 100%, that's a whole different creature. I mean, this is this is a run. So the run I watched was your run from, I think it was ESA Corona Relief, or I forget the exact name of the marathon it was, but
yes.
Okay, and so you did the 100% blindfolded, and that's like a lot. And I feel like at this point, when you're talking about something this long, you're really thinking about the amount that you have to memorize and remember where you are, at any given time. Yeah. How did you end up running Metroid Fusion? Was this a game that you had played before? What's the history here?
Yeah, it was like a childhood favorite mostly. I did this with basically most of my blindfolded runs. I just took games I actually enjoyed a lot myself, and then looked into it, how it's possible, if it's possible at all. I think that's like a pretty good approach for speedrunning in general. Like, take the game that you like, that will bring you the most joy, I think. But yeah, Metroid Fusion, I was always very interested because before that already I did Zero Mission Metroid, and since both are the GBA 2D Metroid titles, it's like kind of similar, a bit different physics. But yeah, Zero Mission is way shorter, of course. It's a shorter run, and people told me before I started running, like I remember when I joined the community and I was like, yeah, I'm planning to do this blindfolded, and I just heard like the top runners of the visual speedrun were like, yeah, haha, good luck with all the bosses and stuff.
Wow. All right.
So yeah, honestly, all these kind of comments, they just push me further and motivate me more. It's like always, it's like the general rule of thumb. If someone tells you like this speedrun is impossible, then give it like 2 or 3 weeks of time, and there will be a blindfolded run of it. It's always like that. But no, yeah, I started actually with 100% before any percent even.
Really? Okay.
Yes, that's also an interesting routing fact, I think, because I was eventually going to do hundo anyways, and I thought if I start with 100%, then theoretically it will just get easier because I will know the route already for any %2 basically. So it was just like a look into the future a bit. Like I will run both of the categories anyways. Then let's give it at the beginning more effort to learn, and then it will be easier later on, I think. And then it turned out Hundo is the way more enjoyable category anyway. So.
Cool. I mean, it's interesting that I would have expected it to be the other way around. I mean, when it came to routing this out, one of the things that impressed me, and I think you even talked about this before, starting the Blindfolded run, is that a game like this, part of why you're able to do it blindfolded was it really has an impressive amount of sound design going on. In terms of like knowing where you are based on different sound effects, using echolocation, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Were there big challenges here, or is the main challenge just the length of it, just the being able to hold on to actually getting all of the collectibles?
Yeah. No, the Fusion especially is really, even from like a performance-wise aspect, very difficult. So it's not like the bosses are easy also. That's most of the bosses have in many games they have a cheese threat or something that you can just stand in some corner, have invincibility, and then you just shoot also. That's kind of not really the case in Fusion. I had to really come up with some creative setups for all the boss fights. Most of them still are very random. You have to get lucky and you have to hit some good shots, for example. So there's this, and especially at the very end, the Shine Spark sections in the cleanup. This is just pure input difficulty that you need to do, because it's tricks that you only have a few frames, and it's not that different if you're blindfolded or not, because you have just these few frames. If you now use a visual cue or an audio cue for that, it doesn't really change it. It's really difficult in itself. So the audio design helped for sure. It has amazing audio, definitely, and it also has very cool normalization mechanics with the jumps that you can do, for example. So all these things help, but there is always something difficult, I think, that remains.
Now, one thing I wanted to, probably should have asked this earlier, but just to make sure that we have our definitions right for people who aren't familiar with blindfolded speedrunning, when you say normalization, my assumption is that normalization is some setup or method by which you, as the blindfolded runner, can verify that you are in a particular position and location.
Yes, that's generally correct. Exactly. So we use this term a lot for both normalized movements and normalized positions, for example. But what we in general mean is it's something that we definitely 100% know the result of. It will always result in it's an action that always results in the same outcome, basically. So a normalized movement is something that always moves you, for example, 5 units to the right, like a punch, for example. And okay, I started at position X and now I'm at position Y, and I know exactly where I am because of that. There's no variance in it at all. It's 100% consistent. And the same goes for positions, like you said, for example, if I'm standing in a corner and I do some normalized setup, then it lets me verify that I'm actually 100% in this corner. I know where I am. I can from here continue my strats and continue the run.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's neat to see what gets used for that. And of course, also it depends on the type of run. I mean, I think it is easier maybe for someone to visually follow how you're normalized in something like Fusion versus all of the normalization in Super Mario 64 is truly wild stuff. Watching you do, I think it was you got first try cannonless in the GDQ run, and I think I was watching it and I just did a little applause, yeah, you know what, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's really, I think, one of the easiest starts in the run, because it's all normalized. You do the setup, it's backflip, punch, I don't know, C left, backflip again, and like there's no variance in this. This is like consistent if you do it correctly. Whereas there are like stars where you have to like beat count the jumps, and you have to, which look like easy, for example, but in reality it's like way more difficult.
Let's talk about another game that I think people, so I mentioned earlier, people are like, okay, all-time classic, 2D platformer, like, okay, sure, Blindfold, speedrun these. But we've already mentioned a few times that you are a huge fan of Nier Automata, and specifically, you've submitted the A ending. You've even done an E ending speedrun for it, Blindfolded. What's your history of Nier Automata, and how did you decide to do Blindfold speedruns of it?
Honestly, it was again like just on a whim. Like I was playing it with my friend. I think like my second playthrough, I showed it my friend, and we were just like we had like a hangout all night, played the game, and afterwards I was just like, wouldn't it be fun if I do it blindfolded? And he was like, yeah, haha, definitely. Did we spend now the entire night and we could barely finish it? And yeah, that's that's the story. I sat down and routed it, I guess, and then made a speedrun out of it. No, but really, I enjoyed the game a lot, and I knew it has like all this amazing music and sounds, and the gameplay is cool, it's fluid. I didn't know much about the run yet, but I watched the run, and it turned out that it's extremely interesting speedrun too. Lots of out of bounds glitches, lots of crazy fighting tech, and yeah, one thing led to the other.
Now, are you able, for a game like this, are you able to adapt a lot of those techniques, like the out of bounds glitches, for your? So I'll admit, because I am probably playing this soon, I didn't watch too much of this one. So but at an abstract level, are you able to adapt a lot of that successfully, or are you really, because of the need for normalization, coming up with your own stuff?
Yeah, that's the funny part now, because my PB that I also used as my submission, it is rather, you could call it like glitchless if you want. Like there is one out of bounds that I do, I think, which is like very in the beginning, and it's like very standard. But otherwise, I run through the game basically like the glitchless run rather than like any percent, because yeah, as you said, there's like no real way to like set up all these things. But the problem is, on my PB, I used still a PS4 controller. I did not have my fighting stick yet. So I finished the game without notches, which is a miracle in itself. Honestly, I cannot tell you how I did it. For like many PBs even, it's like crazy. But yeah, I did not have notches, and now I bought a fighting stick, and also I have now a functioning PC finally, where I can play the game with my hoary Xbox GameCube hybrid thing. And the funny thing is, I actually rerouted the entire run already, and I think all of the out of bounds clips, which even like the super most precise things, I found setups for blindfolded. So it's a shame that I don't have a run yet to showcase this, and I would really love to submit like this to GDQ with the out of bounds.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't make much of a time difference. Like it would save maybe 10 minutes total, which makes the run on top of that way harder too. So it's not really that worth it, but from a like styles perspective, it would be extremely cool to showcase this. So if this gets in, definitely you will see all the glitches that you can see in visual.
That's neat. That's really cool. That's I'm makes me excited. Then hopefully, we'll get to see it in some form then in the future. I also know, so we focused on A ending. E ending is like that seems like a real undertaking. You ended up doing it in 10 hours. For doing such a long run, was there any sort of particular mindset there in terms of like how you prepared for that, or also like how often you'd want to do that kind of thing?
Yeah. So this was definitely a one-time thing. I say was because after the run, I instantly rewatched it, and I saw there is so much time saved, and I would really like to just improve it. But then again, it's just life. You don't have time to do 10-hour runs every day if you have like IRL stuff going on still. It's like not possible. So maybe one day I will want to return, but I think it will stay rather a one-time thing, unfortunately. But it's maybe also good because I have like it was like this big event for me, this run. It was like my like goodbye to the game. After that I switched to different games again. So it was like this farewell, and it was really nice. Like the entire community was watching it, and afterwards we talked about it and stuff. So it's like maybe good that it stands as this goodbye thing.
You did it. I mean, that's honestly like that's also in and of itself is, you know, an accomplishment to do something like that, to sort of do the proof of concept. Like a speed run isn't real until you do a run. Like you got to do a run.
Exactly.
You can take it from there. Maybe the time will fall a lot, but you still have to do that first run to make it happen. All right, let's start heading towards the exit of the formal script. So if we have folks live here with us, I'm going to ask a few questions to sort of end the single one-on-one part of the script. If you have questions, start formulating those questions for the live Q&A at the very end. This is an interview series podcast, which does mean I like to add a little connective tissue. I get a question from my previous guest for my next guest, and so on. My previous guest, Conception 2, who runs Bug Snacks, Grim Fandango, some other stuff, had this question for you. Now, remember, the speedrunner, the previous guest, knows the next guest is a speedrunner. It doesn't have to be a speedrunning question. So the question that you got is, what has been the best restaurant experience of your life?
Ooh. Whoa, that's a difficult one.
That's a big one. Yeah, I wasn't. It's especially hard to think about now. I feel like I don't know what the.
Yeah, it's like such a change of topic suddenly.
Yeah.
No, but I can definitely pinpoint it down at least to like a smaller selection. It's 100% when I was in Japan. It was probably either some ramen restaurant I went to, or like some sushi restaurant maybe. But I have like so many good experiences with food there. So I would say Japanese restaurants, doesn't matter which food, with friends, just hanging out and eating good food.
Cool. No, I mean, honestly, that's a great question when it comes to, what a great answer, because I find the same case travel. And honestly, it can even be bad food sometimes, but like, I know I still think about like a meal I had in Madison Square Garden, even though it was not good food, but like, it just, it hit the spot. And so travel definitely can sweeten the deal. So that does mean that I do need from you a question for my next guest, who will be a speedrunner. It doesn't have to be about speedrunning. It often is, but you've had questions about food, questions about music. Do you have a question that you would like to relay to my next guest?
Let me think about it for a second.
Yeah, take a moment.
Maybe something like, since I'm kind of from the challenge run part of speedrunning, could you speedrun your game with only using one hand? ?
Ooh, see, this is gonna be good. All right, let me make sure I get this down. Could you speedrun your game with one hand? I will say my next guest is not half coordinated, so we don't have to worry about that happening. That would be something.
That would be very big coincidence.
very, very big coincidence. I will spoil for you. This is gonna be funny. My next guest is someone who also does challenge runs of a certain flavor. I DM'd it to you. Do you know who this is?
1 second.
If you have the DM open.
I heard the name.
Okay, so this is... I'll just type it in the DM what they do.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe that jogs your memory. So that'll be announced soon. That'll be fun to ask.
That would be an interesting question.
Right? No, definitely. I'm looking forward to getting that answered now. How about, what are some upcoming games that you are excited to play, that you're keeping an eye out coming out in the future?
right now, a few days ago, Nier Replicant came out, the remake of the first Nier. Yeah, I already played through it casually, and I already started routing it blindfolded too. So one day this will be another big run, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I don't know. It will be long. That's the problem. Right now, the visual speedrun is standing at like 4 hours. So it will be, again, like a 10-hour deal, kind of. So this will be one run I look forward to. It will still take me months, maybe half a year to finish the project. But otherwise, I'm currently still routing 120 star in SM64. That's the next big goal for me. And otherwise, from new games that have not released yet, I am very interested in... Wait, is it out already? I don't know. Shin Megami Tensei remake of
Nocturne, the Nocturne HD remake.
Yes.
I think that's coming out in like a few
like
weeks.
Soon, right?
Yeah, it's in mid-May, I think.
So that I'm very interested in, like in a casual playthrough kind of way. Who knows if it's viable for blindfolded? Then who knows? But it will probably be very painful.
Yeah, worldwide release May 25th, so the end of the month.
Oh, nice, cool.
Well, yeah, look forward to that. I mean, you know, I'm it's definitely gonna. I feel like gonna be a dry year just because of all the production difficulties on account of the pandemic. So, but still some stuff coming along that people are excited for, which is good. Who are some people that, if you could put more eyeballs on a few people to shout them out? I know you already mentioned people in the context of the folks you work with for blindfolded speedrun community stuff. I don't know if those same people stream, but certainly anybody, you know, who puts out stuff, whether it be on Twitch or YouTube, that you would want to send eyeballs to. Who would those people be?
Definitely the people from my speedrunning community, I guess. It's mostly the same that I already said.
Okay.
But Cartoon24, he got me into this whole community. He does lots of blindfolded speedruns, especially in the past he did lots. Right now he still streams, but he does more like SMW Kaizo things. But he has amazing runs. I encourage anyone to check them out on YouTube. Crystal Saver has finished most of the Zelda like series blindfolded already, like most of the games. I think there are only a few games left that he hasn't done. Really cool and kind guy. Yeah, all of the people. I don't know, there are so many.
Yeah, no, definitely. Of course, as I mentioned before, I'll be linking certainly the community's website in the show notes. So
you can find all the cool people there. Definitely, all the runs are worth watching. I can just recommend. So take whichever game you like and check it out.
And so here, I'm going to dump in, if you're with us live, I've just dumped your links into the chat, your Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. As I mentioned, in the show notes, you'll be able to find the blindfolded gaming.com website as well. Bubzia, now, is there anywhere else that people should be finding your stuff? What is the primary stuff you're working on? Should people be going to your Twitch, going to your YouTube? Where should they be looking for you?
Mostly my Twitch, I guess, because I stream everything there. I stream like 4 days a week, mostly whenever I have time, to route blindfolded stuff, or do runs. So all the runs will be there, 100%. But if you more you're not interested in the whole routing and you just want to see the big achievements, then definitely YouTube.
Okay.
It's like my place where just all the PBs go, all the blindfolded runs that I did already. I have like a big playlist on YouTube where just all the runs that I ever did is like in one place. So maybe that's better, but these are the main resources, definitely.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you. So let's end up the formal part, folks. I already saw one question in the chat, which we'll be asking in a second. But before we get to that, first off, thank you so much for all the time that you've given me.
No, thank you very much for having me. It was very fun.
And before we go to the live Q&A, I need one more thing from you, which is that I'm going to use a cheesy catchphrase, like "let's boost on out of here." And when I say that, I want you to give me your best rocket engine noise.
Okay.
All right, folks.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening. Let's boost on out of here. Excellent. All right, we did it. Mission accomplished. All right, folks. Yeah. So if you got questions, please just throw them in the chat. I will be reading them out. Bubzia can read them even now. Not often the case, but. So Kodzik asked, a fellow GDQ veteran here. Kodzik asks, what are key deal breakers that disqualify a game from being run blindfolded? I feel like you mentioned one already with Kingdom Hearts 3, like an example of one. Yes. But maybe you have a grasp generally on what are common deal breakers.
Definitely, there are some. So as I said, RNG is a big factor. If there is anything that has like unpredictable RNG, especially in terms of mostly like stupid mini games that appear somewhere in the game that have nothing to do with the story, and they are literally just like a roadblock where you cannot get past, and the later in the run the worse it is. For example, there was also The Witness, like a puzzle game on PS4, which many people have interest in trying blindfolded because all the puzzles are like static, besides like the last one, which is random all the time. And that's like, yeah, okay, sorry, not possible. So that's kind of not so good. Other deal breakers, mostly camera behavior of different games. If it's always very good if there's a static camera in a video game, especially in 3D titles, where like if you move to the right, then the camera stays behind you and doesn't move like behind the character again. So you don't need to anticipate like how the camera now behaves. But most games unfortunately don't have that, which is not so bad. You can still live with it. But if there's a camera which is like really, really bad behaving, an example like Dark Souls, for example, if you get like close to a wall, the camera just goes like behind your player, and if you hold forward, you just walk into like a random direction because the cam is messed up. That's always very bad. So I would say mostly RNG and camera behaviors are the big deal breakers, or like very, very incredibly difficult boss fights maybe that just need precision and interaction, and it's not possible.
Yeah, I found myself when you were talking about the camera thing, like obviously one of the first things I'd thought about was analog sticks, and I'm 0% surprised that the GameCube controller and its notches would be preferable. Yes. That was definitely I felt like I predicted that one, but I think what I couldn't predict was, because I feel like there was like an era of like late PS1, early PS2 before we had gotten into sort of that modern paradigm of the way dual sticks usually control a character in third person today. Mm-hmm. You had a lot of games that were sort of like Resident Evil-esque, that they would have like a fixed camera and the controls would be like contextual, and especially you would have like the moments where you would change camera angles, but because you held down a direction, you would still be traveling in the same direction. But if you release that direction and then go back, like, do you know what I'm talking about? Like that kind of control scheme.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh man, I wonder how. And of course, the answer is you would have a consistent setup if there's one to be found. But like,
probably, yeah.
But
it reminds me of Silent Hill, which I tried once. It also has these crazy tank controls, basically, where you just walk, where you like steer left and right. The problem with these kind of games is, as you said, the camera doesn't really matter in a sense, because your character just moves how the character faces. Yeah. But there's another problem with these games in, for example, transitions. Because if you go through like a room and, you know, sometimes the camera points like straight and then there's like an up view, for example, in the next room. And if you change the analog stick, like if you hold straight up, the character will like move forward, but due to the camera changing, it might like change the character position towards up to. Like I had some very weird situations with these kind of interactions. So transitions are always a thing to consider still. And also, it's very difficult to turn the character too, because you'd have to like beat count somehow the turning and stuff. So yeah, I'm not a fan of these kind of controls.
Sure. All right, Richu here asks, and this is curious out for your judgment. Do you find 2D games to innately be better for blind playing than 3D? Like, does that hold up, or?
I don't think so. It's like a very interesting question too, because it really depends on game per game basis. Some 2D games in general, I would say 2D is nicer to remember maybe, because you have like pictures of a 2D screen that you can remember, and you know like the layout of the platforms and stuff. But at the same time, I personally honestly think 2D games in most cases are more difficult than 3D games in Blindfolded, which is probably surprising. But if you take like Super Mario World, for example, just because it's 2D, it doesn't mean that it's easier also, because the fact that it's 2D doesn't do anything in the matter that it's extremely like input heavy and execution wise like tight. So you still need to make like these super precise jumps, and honestly, it comes down not that much if it's 2D or 3D, but how much tools to normalization you have. And 2D games mostly have less different control options than 3D games, where you have like, I don't know, 5 attacks instead of just like 1 attack in 2D, for example. So you have like mostly in 3D games more things to work with which makes it easier in the long run, I think.
Right. As features have a way of having unintended usage. Like this is something I talk about with like, I have friends that I do kind of bad game speedruns, right? Awful game block type stuff. And a lot of times you'll pick up a game, you're like, oh, there's got to be something you can do with this. But the problem with bad games, and I say that in quotes because, you know, I don't want to be mean to developers. It's never my intention. But oftentimes those games lack features. And it turns out features are useful, and unintendedly so, as you know, I'm sure you've discovered many times when it comes to creating consistent setups or finding tricks or, you know, doing anything like that. So
definitely, yeah.
So interesting. So on the subject of features, I noticed both Apache and Richie here kind of are talking about accessibility for sight impaired folks. Now, of course, that's not really, you know, the idea here, but like as time goes on, thanks to like I mentioned Half Coordinated once, who recently became you know, an accessibility coordinator for Ubisoft, gets into this idea that there's more awareness. There isn't always a budget for it, but certainly, and I think this is positive, there's more awareness for accessibility type issues. Hopefully that means that it becomes easier, you know, and the solutions, especially, you know, easily implemented solutions become more available. Have you been at all in a situation? I'm going to sort of steal Apache's question and twist it here a little bit, which is to ask, have you been in a situation where accessibility features have impacted the feasibility of a blindfolded speedrun? Because I would expect, obviously, Super Mario 64, this doesn't apply, but, you know, we're getting more games. Like I know Last of Us Part 2 had an impressive array of features. Have you encountered any modern games where, because they are doing a better job of accessibility, that impacts what you can do as a blindfolded challenge runner?
Definitely. I really am a big fan of general control remappings. That's very important, I think. In both of the Nier titles, for example, it's also an option to just remap your buttons however you want, which is extremely convenient for also blindfolded speedruns. But also, I mean, visually too, it's always good when you can move around how you are comfortable and you don't need to strain your hands so much, for example, with different setups. But yeah, even so, it's very good for blindfolded to have like certain actions on the left hand or like on the right hand, because you usually use your left hand for the stick, and that's like the main usage. So you don't want, like, for example, the main attack button also to be like on the triggers on the left hand or so. And if there's like no option to change that, it's like, it's still possible, of course, but it's like makes things so much more uncomfortable. So I think just general control remapping features are very important. They should implement this everywhere, honestly. Otherwise, especially for blindfolded speedruns now, as you said, and as I said earlier too, like things like rumble might be pretty important with like in Metal Gear Solid, the rolls, for example. It's something that like, it doesn't really affect you if you have eyes, but or if you can see, but like you notice these tiny things when you do like blindfolded runs, and they are helpful. Like I wouldn't say they are 100% necessary even for like blindfolded speedruns, but they are helpful, and I guess that's what it's about. Like it should make the life easier, not harder.
Have you or anyone in the blindfolded community interacted with the DualSense controller for PS5? Because I know that has like a number of haptic features, and I'm curious if that.
I'm also very interested in it, but I cannot get my hands on one because of voltage. Yeah, no, I'm very curious if it like does some help in any way, or if it makes things easier. Again, it doesn't have notches, so I'm not a big fan already. But
yeah,
it's nice to try, I guess.
Apache here in chat is a big member of the Metal Gear Solid speedrun community. Actually, I don't know, Apache, were you here when Bubzia was talking about Metal Gear Solid 3? Apache is a huge Metal Gear Solid 3 runner, so I was curious. He might have ducked out at that point, but he mentions that apparently one of their community members, Metal Gear Solid speedrunners, great community. Oh, you missed that. Well, you have to go back and catch it in the VOD. Bubzia mentioned some of the difficulties with trying to run Metal Gear Solid 3. So you'll have to go back and find that surprise for you later. But you did mention, Apache mentioned that one of their runners did MGS1 blindfolded. I'm wondering, actually, now I want to search your website. See, this is the great utility. You have a website that makes it easy to find these things. Is there a search function on the site, or?
There should be, right?
Okay. Oh, I found it. It's listed. There you go. Tromboncino, MGS1. Yeah, it's on the. So let me just throw it in chat right now, since it came up. But yeah, there you go. So and Tromboncino's run is on that website. So the community knows about it. I don't know if Bubzia specifically knows about it, but certainly the community knows
I know it too.
Okay.
Like we see like all the runs that get there, and we try to verify all of them too. Like we cannot watch through the whole backlog. I guess it would be lots of work, but at least I myself always skip through the runs and make sure that like the people is actually like blindfolded, or like no one is there to help and stuff.
Yeah.
So we try to verify all the runs that are on there.
We're getting some late questions here. Let's get through these. Kodzik asks, sound cues, of course, are very important. Are there examples of in-game sounds that make your life worse?
Yes. Lots of times, actually, and in many different situations too. First, what comes to mind is way too loud music. In Nier Automata, for example, I used to run without background music at all because it was so loud that you could not hear any of your like attacks or inputs of like rolls and dashes, which it sucks because the music is very cool, but it just is so loud that it eats all the other sounds. And otherwise, just in general, sound cues that eat other sound cues, it's the worst. If some sound is suddenly not there where it should be just because some other sound plays at the same time, that's not good. Mostly it happens when too much sounds at the same time goes on. For example, on GBA, I think there was only like 6 sound channels at once. So in Metroid Fusion, when there is one particular boss fight, he has like one sound that eats all of these audio channels and literally everything else is like mute. Then it's like, yeah, not so good.
Yeah, I was thinking of that specifically because, I mean, when you're talking about Automata, that's more in kind of a something that deafens other sounds just by being loud. But, when it comes to older hardware platforms, you are limited in your number of channels, and you can literally lose the sound, not just not just mix to lose it, but like lose it because it can't, there's not the room for it. Richu mentions, I assume this is normally forbidden, but if you had an option to use a metronome inside Super Mario 64, would that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Simple and just yes. Metronomes would be the biggest help ever. That's why I also don't use them, because for me it's like it would, like as a blindfolded speedrunner who knows what he does, basically, who knows how to beat count and everything, it would be way more useful than using like a turbo controller or anything. Like it would be the biggest help for me ever. We always discuss this because in our community we have people who think that it should be allowed and people who think it shouldn't be allowed. So I still leave it up to everyone. If you want to use one, sure, go ahead. Like, I just want people to have fun with this.
Sure,
I'm not restricting anyone, but I myself, I would try to advise you, try it without, like, try to beat count, for example, the background music. It makes the whole thing complete, you know, without outside tools at all. It makes just you and the game one experience.
Cool. No, I mean that sounds like the good advice generally, besides just the specific this situation. My last question for you then is, do you have a raid target that I could send people to now that we've wrapped up, we've reached our end of our time slot? So do you have a destination that I could send people to?
Let me quickly check if someone I know is online. Yes, I actually have.
Ooh, okay.
They're called. I can send you a DM.
Yeah, put a DM or put it in the chat, either or.
It's Pluto, the thing. They are actually a extremely talented SM64 ROM hack speedrunner, or like challenge runner. And currently they are attempting to go for like the hardest ROM hack in the world.
Ooh.
And it's yes, they have 100 views, so I assume it's a very good attempt. So that would be interesting.
Well, let's cue that up. I don't know. Obviously, some number of our viewers are actually on the front page of Speedrunning.com. Hello, I love all of you too. But we'll send over whoever we have here locally. Thanks again for giving me all the time, and I will go ahead and let you get back to your day now.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Take care.
Bye-bye.